We've all been through a long and difficult winter. We've had polar vortices, and by the way, I've never heard that expression before this year. I've never heard of a polar vortex. And we've had lots of snow. In the midst of a winter that was already challenging, our drinking water was poisoned. Every year, I feel joy when I see the first buds on the trees and the grass starting to grow. This year, a sense of relief was even greater than the joy. At last, this winter is over. As you might imagine, ancient peoples were also relieved every year with the coming of spring and summer. By that time, the food they'd stored for the winter was running low, and new crops would soon be needed. With warmer weather, there was no longer the desperate need for firewood. For those who did and who do live entirely off their land, the coming of summer is an absolute life and death matter. Even when summer comes, there are so many things that can go wrong. Not enough rain, or too much, too hot or too cold, diseases in crops or animals. No wonder then that people in the pre-Christian times were happy to celebrate the return of summer and were glad to honor the gods and goddesses upon whom they depended for good crops, good health, and good luck. We've had the luxury for many years to live in a society where we really don't have to pay that much attention to the earth's cycles and changes. We buy our food in large stores where we can get about any fresh vegetable at any time of the year because food can be shipped in from anywhere in the world. We don't have to grow it ourselves or buy it from a nearby farmer. Our homes are heated and cooled automatically. We don't have to gather firewood unless we want to. We flick a switch and it is bright as day anytime in our homes. We don't rely on candles we had to make ourselves for light. Water is piped into our homes. We don't have to carry it from a well or a stream. Oops. That last is not entirely correct for many West Virginians. Due to the chemical leak in the Elk River in January, the water coming into our homes, offices, and schools became unfit for human consumption. In fact, for 5 days, we were told to use the water for nothing but toilet flushing. If we needed water for drinking, cooking, or washing, we had to carry it into our homes from another source. This meant either buying bottled water or standing in line at the various emergency water distribution sites. Many of us have not yet started using our tap water for drinking or cooking. We're still carrying water into our homes just as our ancestors did. Well, not exactly the same, but. The water crisis served to illustrate that despite all our modern technology, we forget our connection to nature at our own peril. No matter how far removed from our location, we rely on farms and farmers to provide our food. We rely on clean water sources for the water that is piped into our homes. We rely on sun and rain, dirt and air for our very lives. The water crisis also illustrated how very close we are at any moment to chaos. I have heard many people describing when they tried to find water on the evening of January 9th when we first learned we shouldn't drink the water. There are stories of people fighting over the last bottle of water on a store shelf, and of people filling shopping carts to overflowing with water. Fortunately, the next day there was water available in most stores again, and there were some emergency water distribution points, although they ran out early. What if we had to wait for a few days for water to be shipped in? Would we sink into survival of the fittest mode? What if we lost electricity throughout the whole area for a few days? The only positive thing I saw in the first few days of our water crisis was that, for once, The rich were inconvenienced by a crisis. Of course, the poor were more drastically affected through lost work and the cost of buying water. But at least the rich had to go without showers along with the rest of us. South Hill's water was just as dirty as the water here on the west side. This fact gave me some hope that a long-term remedy for this situation might occur. Every year at Beltane, I think about the wisdom of so-called primitive people. There were a lot of things they understood without having the science to back them up. For example, the old Scottish tradition that I talked about with the children of decorating the wells reflects a belief in healing and magic in the water. Maybe this is superstition, or maybe it is a belief arising from the powers water has over life and death. Without water, no life of any kind would exist on earth. And what could be more magical than that? When you honor the sources of all life, the water, the air, the soil, the plants and animals, you're going to understand that there are consequences to their destruction. You might call the practice of honoring and cherishing the earth paganism. You might also call it environmentalism. Most pagans believe that the divine is in all things, animal, vegetable, and mineral. God is not some remote being in the sky, so far above us, literally and figuratively, that we cannot hope to have an intimate relationship with her. Rather, God is everywhere in all creation. Now, I know you skeptics can tell me the scientific basis for the interdependent web of life of which we are all a part, and that explanation would have nothing to do with divine power or influence. And that's fine. Even if you're not a believer, what if you acted as if you were? What if you conserved water and worked to make sure our local streams and rivers are clean and safe? What if you bought your food locally? What if you recycled? What if you hugged trees? Would it matter if you were doing it because you believed there were spirits in everything that would bless you for your work? Would it matter if you didn't believe? Our water crisis has raised a lot of issues of justice and equality that point out how cheaply and disrespectfully some people treat everything and everyone. Water quality is not as important as corporate profits. Clean air and miner safety are not as important as coal companies being able to make more money. It is okay for people who work full-time to live far below the poverty level as long as their employers are obscenely rich. May Day was, and in many places still is, an International Labor Day. Workers and unions are celebrated, but these days it's hard to find something worth celebrating. Companies manage to force employees to work overtime for no extra pay. People have to work when they're sick because they can't afford a day off. Some people in this country have to work in conditions they know are unsafe because they'll lose their jobs if they don't. And jobs aren't always easy to find. Women still make 77 cents for every dollar earned by men. All of the workers' rights that were gained in the 20th century seem to be eroding away in the 21st century. Still, there's some hope, as there always is in May. More people seem to be realizing that global climate change is real, man-made, and dangerous to every living thing on Earth. People are fighting back for voting rights, human rights, and workers' rights. Most importantly, the human heart and human mind remain capable of finding answers to the world's problems. Our beliefs in the 7 principles help us recognize that because all of existence is connected, everything we do, for good or ill, affects everything else. This congregation has always taken the lead in this community in support of justice and equality for all. May Day is a perfect day to remember and recommit to fighting the good fight. All of this just got a little deep for what is traditionally such a fun day. With the weather cooperating, and it certainly seems to be, we'll have a lot of fun with the maypole. We'll dance badly and laugh a lot. We'll later be embarrassed by the resulting pictures posted on Facebook. We'll earn the blessings of the goddess who tells us that all acts of love and pleasure are her rituals. And by the way, just one thing on the maypole dance. If you pass the person in front of you, you're doing it wrong. Other than that, dance and sing with joy and pride. The earth is depending on you. And I didn't have a lot to say today, but I have never heard anyone, with the possible exception of David Miller, complain about a service being too short. So, with the good weather, the good food, and the lovely maypole, let's sing our closing hymn. I don't remember what it is. Oh.